Hello and welcome. It is Big Talk with Todd and Noah, presented by Xfinity 10G Network, episode number 13 and week number 13 of the college football season. Todd, it's been a quick and adventurous journey through this first season of a podcast, first season of calling Big Ten Saturday Night together. We reach our final week of the regular season. I guess let's start with your reactions from week 12 and I guess, what are you excited about now as we get set for week 13? We'll kind of go through the whole gauntlet as always.
Yeah, I guess my first couple thoughts. I mean, what a tragic injury for Jordan Travis. You know, nobody likes to see that. I mean, I don't like to see anybody get hurt, but he was having a remarkable year. Florida State having a championship caliber season, you know, right in line for an ACC championship opportunity, college football playoff opportunity, and then he goes down with a very serious, gruesome injury, and it's just a shame to see that happen and see his season come to an end like that. So that was probably the biggest thing that stood out to me over the weekend. I think that some of the teams are continuing to flex their muscles as we get closer to the end. Teams like Georgia, I think Ohio State is playing really well right now. I think Oregon and Washington are kind of heading to another collision course in the Pac-12. So and we're at that point now where this coming weekend, it's all the rivalry games, right? I mean, just right down the list all across the country, big time rivalry games that matter, even if it's not for championship implications. They're just huge games all over the country. So very fun weekend coming up.
The Jordan Travis thing, I know that the stakes for this one were a little bit higher, but it was weirdly reminiscent to the Mackenzie Milton injury to me from a couple of years back, where UCF is undefeated for the second consecutive year. They're coming down the stretch. They're finally getting some noise of, hey, this could be a playoff team if they just handle their business and dominate the rest of the way. And it was a gruesome injury, and same type of deal for Jordan. So you feel for him, his college career, they have officially said is done, and a heck of a college career. I mean, a heck of a job for everything that he did and helping to bring FSU back to prominence, which I think we both agree it's good for college football when the Seminoles are good, which they've been now the last 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he's battled injuries throughout his career, and this was his final year, and he was really kind of staying healthy and, again, putting up great numbers and leading his team. And so now we'll see, I guess, Tate, what is it, Roadmaker, however you say it. He's the guy that'll step in. He stepped in, ironically, last year and led them to a win over Louisville. So that's kind of who they're headed to meet in the ACC championship game. And it'll be very interesting. Two things. Number one, they got to play Florida first, which will not be easy. Number two, they'll play Louisville here in Charlotte in the ACC championship game. And without Jordan Travis, that's not going to be easy because Louisville's playing great football right now. And then number three, what is the college football playoff committee? How are they going to evaluate Florida State? They've got to take into consideration that there is no Jordan Travis. Does that make them less competitive or not? It'll be very interesting to see, even in this, the ranking coming out this week, because I could honestly see, not just because of that, I could see Washington potentially jumping them in this week's poll, because Washington had a huge win on the road in a tough place against a ranked Oregon State team. And really the only significant win that Florida State has goes all the way back to the beginning, their win over LSU, who now has 3 losses. They may have the best player in the country,
sure,
Jaden Daniels, but they have 3 losses on their resume.
Yeah, interesting situations moving forward. And we look back to last week. One team we know, if they run the table and certainly if they win their conference, will be in there, is Georgia, 2-time champion. They look, to your point, dominant again in many facets of the game. The 38-10 win over number 21 Tennessee. They go undefeated in the SEC to this point again, and now they have a chance to, if they can continue and if they can find a way past Alabama in the SEC championship game, give themselves a really, really impressive opportunity to three-peat, which we know is not an easy thing to do, certainly in today's college football landscape. But Carson Beck, we've we've hit on him a little bit. I don't think we've given him enough credit for how well he's played as the season has gone on. He's gotten better with each week. He looked really comfortable again.
Yeah, he's throwing for over 300 yards just about every week. They've got good balance in their offense. Now they've got Brock Bowers back in the mix, and so they're hitting on all cylinders. But Carson Beck has played outstanding all season long, and it's been impressive to see. Mike Bobo doing a nice job with him, and last 2 years they win a national championship with Stetson Bennett, and when he first started playing, the idea was he was a game manager, and then pretty soon you saw, well, wait a minute, this guy can make plays too, and he's got a little edge to him and all that. Carson Beck he's bigger, he's more athletic, he's got a better arm. This is a first round draft pick potential quarterback in Carson Beck, who's playing lights out in his first year as a starter. So yeah, and Georgia has been my number one team all along. Yeah. I know they've kind of flopped with Ohio State there earlier in the first college football playoff ranking, but Georgia is legitimately the number one team in the nation right now.
Balanced, still showcasing a lot of what they have, but it's going to be a legitimate matchup in the SEC championship. We know who they're going to face. The question is whether or not Alabama will have a loss by that point. Again, a second loss. Because, look, they rolled over Chattanooga. I don't even want to focus on that game as much as what's in front of them right now. And you mentioned rivalry week. I'm not saying Auburn is what Auburn used to be. I'm not saying that they're going to play this incredible game, but it is the Iron Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Weird things happen in the Iron Bowl. So at least it was good to see that Alabama didn't look too far ahead, and they just kind of handled their business against Chattanooga, and Jalen Milroe continued to play well. Now this is a big-time test and not looking ahead again in front of the SEC title.
Yeah, absolutely. And the game is in Auburn, so and weird things have happened there in this rivalry game, thinking back to the kick six. But beyond that, both Auburn and Alabama did the same thing last week. They scheduled teams that they were supposed to have an easy time with, right? Alabama did with Chattanooga. Auburn paid New Mexico State $1.85 million to come and play, and then got beat by 3 touchdowns. So, but I still think Auburn will play lights out. They'll play their best game of the year in this game because it means so much. But Alabama is the better football team, and Alabama should win the game. And I think that they are really hitting their stride. I think offensively, they're very comfortable with Jalen Milroe. I think Nick Saban has done a wonderful job coaching this team this year and, overcoming some of the things, the obstacles they've had to overcome. And their defense is rock solid. So I see them being able to go into Auburn and win this one and have a very legitimate chance of beating Georgia in the SEC championship game as well.
That SEC championship game has a chance to be really special. It'll be high stakes, obviously, considering what the playoff picture could look like. And if Alabama can run the table, there's no reason that they won't find themselves in that top 4 at the end of the year. Just another shout out to Missouri for getting a tough win. Getting past Florida, Harrison Mevis feels like he's been there for 18 years at this point, but another clutch kick to win it, 33-31. It's really just a shout out to them for the season that they've had to put themselves in this position. They should be now inside the top 10 of the college football playoff ranking as it comes out this week, but an exciting season and reason for optimism moving forward for Mizzou.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brady Cook, their quarterback, has played really well, threw for 331 yards in this game. And the critical play, Florida's winning the game. They're winning the game 31-30, and they have them stopped on a 4th and 17 play. And Brady Cook is able to hit Luther Burden III, who's an outstanding, talented young receiver, for like 27 yards, 2 more completions. They're in field goal range. They kicked the game-winning field goal. So, Missouri is on quite a roll right now. Brady Cook is playing great at quarterback. And then Cody Schrader ran for 148 yards again. And so he had a huge game against Tennessee last week in a big win. So this is a legitimate team, Missouri Tigers.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And we mentioned it last week, but that game with Georgia was legitimately close, was legitimately competitive into the 4th quarter. You mentioned Jaden Daniels as maybe the best player in college football. You could argue a number of names. What you can't argue is that he's the most productive player right now. These last 2 weeks alone, certainly this week, he had 8 total touchdowns in their game. 8 total touchdowns. He had 413 passing yards. He had 916 or 96. I mean, 916 would have been even more impressive, but 96 rushing yards to go with it. So over 500 total yards and 8 total touchdowns. I know that they've got 3 losses, and it'll be tough to overcome that for a Heisman candidate, but he's 100% going to be in New York. I think that there's
Absolutely.
no doubt about that.
Absolutely. And, I really think he has a chance to win the award because think of it this way. There's really no one he's competing with in that part of the country, right?
Yeah.
There's no player from Georgia that he's competing with. There's no player from Texas that he's competing with. Out west, you've got Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. who are they're going to go against each other as far as votes go. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to do well in the Midwest. But in the South and the Southeast and Southwest, I mean, there's nobody that's going to attract more votes than Jaden Daniels. And he's putting up numbers that are equal to or very similar to what Joe Burrow did in 2019 when he won the Heisman Trophy. The difference was they were undefeated and ended up going on to win a national championship and an SEC championship before that. So that's the biggest difference and the biggest thing that would be holding Jaden Daniels back. But he has had really 2 remarkable years, but this year, very similar to Joe Burrow. Good his first year, and then lights out his second year leading the LSU Tigers.
We've already hit on Florida State and what the Jordan Travis loss means for them in the college football playoff picture. You mentioned Louisville, just an unbelievable first year under Jeff Brom. And it's got to feel great for Jake Plummer, who follows him there to Louisville to basically look. I'm not saying that he single-handedly is winning his team these games, but the way he played this past weekend in the game over Miami and the win over Miami, I really thought was impressive to see him have that poise, to see it wasn't an easy victory like maybe some of the others this season have been, but to kind of pull it out and make the plays he did, over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air. They've got something special brewing over there in Kentucky right now.
Yeah, they really do. And, you want to play your best down the stretch. You want to play your best down the stretch in a game. They outscored Miami 15-3 in the fourth quarter, and kind of took control of that game on the road. Miami had that last ditch, kind of Hail Mary that was caught, but just short of the goal line. Could have had a chance to maybe tie the game. But how about this for Jeff Brom? Back-to-back seasons. All right. Last year at Purdue, he leads them to the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis. First time in program history. Comes to Louisville, his alma mater, and for the first time in Louisville's history, they're going to the ACC championship in his first year. So consecutive years taking 2 different teams to their conference championship games. Pretty impressive for Jeff Brom.
I will repeat the story I've said on the podcast about Jeff Brom. You go back to that interview he did when he was in the XFL, and that's all you need to see, where he's got a neck brace on after he went out for one game. He comes back before the next game and they go, "Are you going to play today?" And he goes, "Let me answer that question with my own 2 questions. 1, is this or is this not the XFL? Yes, it is. 2, am I or am I not breathing right now? Yes, I am. Let's play some football." That's a dude you want to play for. That's a dude that's going to inspire winning. That's a dude that continues to find ways to get it done. So congratulations to Louisville and to Jeff Brom. And path made even easier. I mean, they were going to clinch it regardless with a win, but UNC ends up losing to Clemson anyway. So the 31-20 Tigers victory just ensured that Louisville was going to get there. Congratulations to the Cardinals for what they've done this year. We move over to the Pac-12, and you mentioned the 2 big names, obviously Penix and Nix. Both of their teams win, but the stats looked a lot different this week. The Washington win is just impressive. To go to Corvallis, to go against the top 10, top 11 team and beat them. They were up, I think it was 22-12 at one point, and then the final score was 22-20. It may have been 22-10. I don't remember.
I think it was 22-10.
Yeah, I think it was. I was watching. It was 22-10. And then Oregon State makes their comeback bid towards the fourth quarter and down the stretch of the game. But Washington holds them off. And despite Michael Penix not having those eye-popping numbers, they keep winning, and he keeps doing enough to get them wins. And that's really all that matters, obviously, long-term. The Heisman's a different conversation. But for Washington right now, and for Kalen DeBoer, who has just won at every stop he's been in his collegiate head coaching career, this is really shaping up to This was the game. And we talked about it last week. They had to get past this game. They're going to have another game this week that they're going to have to, they're going to have their hands full with the Apple Cup. I get that. But this was the game. It felt like if they were going to stumble, it was going to be this past week, and they just found a way to win it. That's all that matters.
Yeah, they found a way to win. They've had a couple gritty, gutty wins like this on their resume. They've beaten a lot of ranked teams because the Pac-12 has been very strong this year. And their defense obviously has shown up when they've needed their defense to show up, So I think that they're a really good football team. And like I said, I will not be surprised at all if they jump Florida State.
Yeah.
They're both undefeated teams, but right now, Washington's overall body of work is more impressive than Florida State's.
On the other side with Oregon, it was just pure domination. I mean, this game was over basically in the first quarter or towards the end of the first quarter. Oregon over Arizona State 49-13. Bo Nix had 6 touchdowns in the first half of the game. So the numbers were gaudy, over 400 yards passing, the 6 touchdowns. Troy Franklin goes off, and they just looked like a well-oiled machine. And quite honestly, most of their games, especially since the Washington game, they have looked like a well-oiled machine. And I think that's why people are so excited for what the Pac-12 championship could look like this year.
Yeah, I think they're playing their best football again, which is what you want to be doing at this time of the year. I think Georgia's playing their best football. Wouldn't you know it? Dan Lanning came from Georgia, kind of that same model, that same blueprint, the Alabama blueprint, the Georgia blueprint, and now he's trying to do the same thing at Oregon. I also think, by him coming out so forcefully and positively and denying and just saying he has no interest in going anywhere. He's not interested in Texas A&M, just kind of fortifying his position there in Eugene. But they are a really good football team. Bo Nix is playing, the best he's ever played in his career. And right now, Oregon, I think, is playing better than anybody out there in the Pac-12.
Without a doubt. Other than maybe Arizona, who just won their 5th game. Jed Fish, what a job he's done, the turnaround in his 3rd year. Because I think that a lot of people were looking at it heading into last week saying, oh, that's a nice story. Arizona, they've won a couple games. They've looked pretty good. But it's Utah, Utah's Utah. They've been the class of the Pac-12 the last couple of years. Well, Arizona blew their doors off. I mean, 42-18. And that
28-0 at one point.
Yes,
I mean, they jumped all over them.
Completely. Yeah. It was complete and utter domination. And the Wildcats have gone from good story to, good football team. Within a matter of a week, essentially.
Yeah, no, they're you're right. I mean, they're playing really good. I mean, they had to go to a backup quarterback, and he's playing outstanding. Fafita, I believe, is his last name.
Well, what's his first name?
Right or not?
But, what's his first name though? It's Noah Fafita.
Noah,
Come on.
Yeah, Noah Fafita. Yeah. Oh yeah, man.
Oh yeah, man. Yes, 100%.
But anyway, they're playing outstanding, and Jed Fish. His name is coming up now on some of these other jobs that are available and open. And, he's got kind of a nice blend of college background, NFL background. He might be a very attractive candidate, but he's doing an outstanding job with the Arizona Wildcats right now.
Should be a lot of fun to see how that develops, that whole situation. They should jump into the top 20 of the college football playoff ranking. They're now 8-3. So another shout out goes to Zona for the way they played this year. We go to the Big 12, and really it was mostly business as usual. Texas gets the win over Iowa State. Wasn't completely dominant, but it was a win, 26-16. Oklahoma, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, they all pick up wins. But Texas leads the way. They're 7-1 in the conference. They're the only hope at this point after Oklahoma dropped that second game to Oklahoma State. They're the only hope to reach the college football playoff, and it's still within their grasp, but it feels like they're going to need some other things to happen for them in order to get there and leapfrog some of the teams in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they've got to take care of the business that's at hand, which is now they've got to beat Texas Tech, and then whoever they meet in the Big 12 championship, they've got to win that ball game, and if they win it convincingly, that would be even more helpful for them. But I want to say something that now this Texas win last week, it made a bigger statement than maybe people might think. You look at the score and you say, well, they just beat Iowa State 26-16. Well, consider a couple things. In the last 4 visits to Ames, Texas has lost 3 times. Okay. They have not played well there. and Iowa State has kind of had their number, right? So they win, and the score was 6-3 Texas at halftime, and they end up winning 26-16. That's number one. Number two, Jonathan Brooks was having a great year as their running back. He gets hurt. A true freshman, C.J. Baxter, steps up to take his place. He carries it 20 times for 117 yards in his absence, right? And Quinn Ewers is back now, for the second week in a row, healthy. So I think this Texas team is legit. And I think, people have been wanting to say for the last couple of years, is Texas back? Is Texas back? I think they are. I think they are now. I think they're really good on defense. They're really solid in their defensive front, their offensive line. They've got really good skill. And I think Steve Sarkisian has a championship-level team right now.
No doubt. They can beat anybody in the country. I think they proved that, obviously, with Alabama. They went right down to the wire. I mean, they had Oklahoma in that Red River rivalry. They had them. And Oklahoma and Dylan Gabriel just put together an outstanding drive. He put together an outstanding capper to that drive. And so it's a fickle thing, college football.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how it is. You can have a championship team, and all it takes is one play, one drive to essentially derail that season. But they've taken care of what they've had to your point. A really impressive game from C.J. Baxter. It feels like any running back they put in at this point is going to excel. I mean, just every guy they've had, if you just look at it, you Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson, and now you say, oh, well, Jonathan Brooks is tearing it up, and then he goes down for the season, and you get C.J. Baxter in there and goes for over 100. They just have a lot of talent in the backfield. But with Ewers there, he's a great leader. I think Sark, to your point, deserves a lot of credit for the job he's done, because that's not an easy job to take because of the expectation. And he's handled it to this point.
And I think talent has been there for a long time.
Yes.
But I think what's different now is there is a physical and a mental toughness and a culture that is different. And I think Sark has finally got that part of it turned around. And I don't know if you remember this, but I read some articles this week and kind of jogged my memory. But Ames was the place a couple of years ago when defensive line coach Bo Davis was recorded on the team bus. And there were a couple players laughing after they just got their butts kicked by Iowa State. And he went off on a tirade about, this is ridiculous. People laughing on the bus. We just got our butts kicked. If you're not going to do things the right way, just get off the bus now. Just leave. Don't be a part of this. A lot more colorful language than I was using right there. But that was kind of a turning point. I mean, they still went out and lost to Kansas the next week at home. So it didn't happen overnight. But that's what needed to change with Texas was mentality and toughness and attitude. And I think that's where they're different now.
It's fun to watch. It's been fun to watch the resurgence just outside of some of the power schools. Game day gets to JMU. It was an unbelievable environment, and they go down and then they come back and they force overtime. You're like, wow, the Dukes are going to pull it off. They're going to stay unbeaten. But how is it always Appalachian State?
Yeah.
Why is it always Appalachian? Why does anyone schedule that team if they don't have to? I know that this is different because it's part of the deal. It's conference. I get that. But if you don't have to schedule App State, why are you scheduling them at this point?
Yeah. And you know what? They're just good.
They are
good.
every year.
They've been good for several years. They've had different coaches there. Eli Drinkwitz, who's doing a great job right now at Missouri. He spent some time there as a head coach. I mean, they have had some really good coaches and really good football players and are not afraid to play anybody. And, now the people signing the biggest relief are the NCAA because now they don't have to take any more questions or pressure about JMU not getting to a bowl game. So, but a heck of a football game.
Really fun. Yeah, really, really fun. Liberty does stay undefeated. They beat UMass, so we'll see if they can climb up the ranking as well. Let's go to our Big Ten roundup. We'll start with Michigan and Maryland, just because that was the first game of the day. It's the 1,000th victory for Michigan. It was probably the worst we've seen J.J. McCarthy play this season. He was uber efficient all year. I mean, he was leading the country at one point in completion percentage. He goes 12 of 23. And part of that is a credit to Maryland's defense and especially their secondary. They've got a lot of really good defensive backs. They've got a number of guys who are legitimate players who will have a chance to play at the next level and play on Sundays. And this is after they had two guys already go to the NFL and be impact rookies this year from last year's team. But Michigan defensively, special teams, they get 2 safeties in the game. Mikey Sainer still is an absolute stud,
Right.
and he has 2 interceptions. And it felt like this was, I'm not saying that the defense hasn't carried them this year, but this was one of the first times they truly helped win them a game when they needed them the most.
Absolutely. I mean, they have played great defense all season and came up with big plays in this one. Now, Maryland moved the ball and scored points, and that's the most points they've given up.
Yes.
Talia Tungavailoa played very well, had a couple critical errors, but overcame them and played well. A couple things about this game. First of all, Maryland's been a weird team, right? We saw them early. They handled their business against Charlotte, got down 14-0, came back one-handedly. Then we saw them again later. We saw them on film against Ohio State, and they played really well against Ohio State. Got some guys beat up, banged up, played that Illinois game without some of their key guys, trying to get to the bye week, lost that game. Then they went in a real tailspin after that, right? And, this is the same team in the same stadium that got beat 51-15 by Penn State, who has not been real explosive on offense all year, but they were in that game. And then they come back and play, it looked like a completely different team against Michigan. So Maryland played the way I felt Maryland was capable of playing all year against Michigan. All right. They gave them their best shot. As far as J.J. McCarthy, the week before against Penn State, he only threw it 8 times, right? 7 completions, 8 attempts. They ran the ball, ran. He also got banged up, it looked like a little bit in that game, whether it was an ankle, a knee, whatever it was. He didn't look 100%. Don't know if that still lingered when they played against Maryland, but you're right. He did not look sharp. He forced the ball. He looked a little bit like he did in the Bowling Green game, where he threw 3 interceptions, where he's just trying too hard to force the ball. The interception he threw in the end zone was just, he hasn't done that since the Bowling Green game, but he just kind of made some bad decisions, some bad throws. And I think, my personal opinion is, I think he misses Jim Harbaugh on the sideline more than anybody else. I think it's their relationship, their rapport, even the way Jim Harbaugh kind of before the game pounds on his shoulder pads and his helmet, just kind of, but they have a friendship and a relationship and a cohesiveness that I think JJ really misses that right now. And he's going to have to miss it again in the biggest game of the year coming up.
The other thing that he did miss, Roman Wilson goes out of the game middle of the first quarter, early of the first quarter. I mean, that's his number 1 receiver. That's a guy that he has targeted early and often. That's someone who has experience in big games. Colston Loveland still made some good catches. AJ Barner's coming on, but they had a go-to guy. And when that go-to guy gets removed from a big game like that, a game you have to win, you have to look elsewhere a little bit. And I think that maybe affected him as well. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because he has so much confidence and trust in Roman Wilson, particularly in critical situations. And he's, Roman Wilson can take the top off the defense.
Yeah.
He's a threat. Now, the one guy I will say that I think he's gaining more confidence in, that I think is going to, he's starting to show up more and more making plays, is that little Samaj Morgan, number 82. I think he's a playmaker who here down the stretch of the season has been a really nice find for the Michigan offense.
Sharon Moore was gushing about his potential, but even his current playmaking ability when we saw him a couple weeks ago. So interesting to see what he'll have as an impact for next week's big game against Ohio State, who just rolled over Minnesota. I mean, they just took control of that game early, never really let it go. Kyle McCord had 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. A quiet day for Marvin Harrison Jr., but it almost speaks to him a little bit, because he's never upset about whether he gets big numbers, small numbers, whether he has a major impact or not as big of an impact in the box score. His impact always felt on the field. And I think he truly, we've talked to him a couple times, he truly only cares about winning at the end of the day. So he had the touchdown, but only 3 catches in the 30 yards. Cade Stover had the other touchdown from McCord. And this was business as usual for the Buckeyes.
Yeah. And again, we've, the constant theme, right? This time of year, you want to be playing your best football. I think Ohio State's playing their best football. This is the best version of Ohio State. Defensively, they've been good from start to finish, right? They've been very, very consistent on defense. Now, Michigan will be the best team that they've played, obviously, the biggest challenge for them in Ann Arbor for that Ohio State defense. But they have risen to the challenge all year. Offensively, they're hitting their stride. Kyle McCord looks good. You know, when we had him against Michigan State, it's the best I'd seen him look in person or on film. You mentioned that that Marvin didn't have a big game, but Emeka Ibuka had his biggest game since September, right?
Yeah.
5 catches for 93 yards. So he's back in the fold. And Travion Henderson, another over 100-yard game. I think that's 4 times or 3 times in the last 4 weeks, whatever it is. I mean, he is such a difference maker in their offense. So I think they're hitting their stride offensively and will go into Ann Arbor kind of as the best version of themselves that they've been all year.
Which is the biggest key. Meanwhile, for Penn State, which is the other power of that Big Ten East, we were curious what they'd look like. They couldn't get the job done against those 2 teams. They couldn't get the job done against Michigan and Ohio State. And then you face a Rutgers team who's, quite frankly, a tough out. And we've seen that against the best teams in this conference. They gave Michigan a pretty good ride. They gave Ohio State a very good ride. And they gave Penn State a heck of a ride as well. Penn State, they would eventually pull away towards the latter stages of the game into the fourth quarter, 27-6. But Drew Allar goes down, the potential right shoulder injury. Now, James Franklin has been pretty clear that he believes that Allar's going to be good to go for the game we'll do this week against Michigan State. But Bo Pribula comes in, and Pribula does provide a little bit of a different look to this offense. With new offensive coordinator calling plays, or 2 of them, calling plays for the first time this past week, and Pribula ran the ball effectively. That kind of dual option that they have with him looked interesting and different for the Nittany Lion offense. And so a lot of questions heading into this Week 13 game against Michigan State. But at the end of the day, they get the win. The defense still looks dominant. We kind of know what they look like as a team at this point, and they've got another chance at a New Year's Six Bowl when it's all said and done.
Yeah, you know, their defense. I mean, there are 3 outstanding defenses in the Big Ten, right? Actually, Nebraska was pretty good also, you know, statistically wise. But these 3 are elite defenses: Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. And Penn State's defense, they get after the quarterback. You know, Chop Robinson missed a couple games after getting hurt in that Michigan game. He's a dynamic player. Got a huge hit on Gavin Wimsatt, caused a fumble, scoop and score for Penn State. You know, so their defense is legit. And offensively, you know, Rutgers has really good corners. They have really good pass defense. And so Penn State relied on their running game, not just when Drew Allar went out, but they ran for over 230 yards in the ball game. So they really committed to the run, and there were lots of different people contributing to that. So it was a good game. And again, it was the first game without Mike Yurcich as the offensive coordinator. So there was different play calling, different guys putting the plan together. James Franklin was involved in the quarterback meetings during the week. So a lot of change, but it was a good win against a pretty feisty Rutgers team.
You did forget one elite defense, though. What about the winner of the Big Ten West?
Oh, yes. Yeah, right. Another elite defense.
Yes.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And so the winner of the Big Ten West determined this week, Iowa. I mean, if Iowa was ever going to find a way to win the Big Ten West, I don't think I could pick a better final score than 15-13. Yeah. I mean, 15-13 over Illinois. And I mean, you mentioned it last week. Illinois' offense had actually looked pretty good the last couple of weeks. Iowa just completely stifles them. And it was a Caleb Johnson 30-yard touchdown run with 4:43 left to put them up top for good. We were watching the end of the game, and I think we both took the step back. I mean, the emotion from Brian Ferentz, the reaction from not just the coaching staff, but the players as well. Yeah. I think the outpouring of support and love for him to get this victory and to win the conference, or to win the division, I should say, and get to the conference championship game, that was really cool to see when this game finished up.
It really was. And how about the embrace with his dad? You know, how do you think Kirk Ferentz was feeling in that moment? I mean, you know, he didn't make the decision about his son. It was people above him that made the decision about Brian Ferentz being done at the end of this year. And he couldn't say anything. He had to kind of bite his lip and just keep his head down and keep working. And they kept finding ways to win. And so to me, I mean, it was vindication to a certain extent, you know, but Iowa doggone it, they did it their way. They won their way. And now, they're not going to match up well against whoever, gets there from the Big Ten, the other side from the East, whether it's Ohio State or Michigan. The last time they played one of those teams, a good team from the East, Penn State beat them in State College earlier this year, 31-0. So it's not a great favorable matchup for them looking ahead, but they deserve to win the Big Ten West, and a hearty congratulations to the Hawkeyes.
They do have Nebraska this week, and Iowa's at 9-2. They have a chance to be 10-2 when the season's over. At the same time, we saw Nebraska. That defense is almost equally as legit as what Iowa has. They've got legitimate dudes on that side of the ball, and Chubba Purdy looked pretty decent. Let's get to that game. Wisconsin and Nebraska, 31-24, overtime win for Wisconsin. Happy for Luke Fickell. You could see and feel the emotion after the game when Catherine was talking to him on the sideline. Braylon Allen, we didn't even think was going to play, and he finishes with 2 touchdowns. I mean, that was a gutsy performance by him. Tanner Mordecai's playing through a lot of pain in his throwing hand after the broken hand not even a month and a half ago. He has a screw in there. He's playing with padding on his hand. So that felt like Wisconsin football in the win. But Chubba Purdy played very well. He had the 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. He didn't really make any critical mistakes. He did throw the interception on the last play of the game. It was inconsequential. It was a 4th and forever anyway. Right. So technically it'll count as a turnover, but realistically, that was a no turnover game for a Nebraska offense that couldn't stop turning the football over. I think we were really excited that it was just a really competitive game, a lot on the line with bowl eligibility. So big for Wisconsin. I think Nebraska is going to have a legitimate shot against Iowa next week, just based on what we saw as well.
Yeah, I do too. I really think they will have a shot at him, because I think Brock, I called him that in the game too. I think Chubba Purdy gives them a whole completely different look and feel offensively, because he is a legit quarterback. He can throw the football, right? He can throw in their play action and their drop back stuff. But as we saw, he's a dynamic runner as well. Yeah. So to me, I think that he gives them a great chance going forward for the rest of this year. I think he's more versatile and can throw the football better than Harburg. I think that right now he's got more confidence and more moxie to him than Jeff Sims, who just had such a tough year with the turnovers that I don't know. I think he's gun shy a little bit, So I think Purdy gives them the best chance going forward. You got that defense. They can run the football. They're good up front. I think they should be, even though they lost, they should be very encouraged coming out of that game by what Purdy showed. Now, with Wisconsin, you're right. Luke Fickell, man, that was just a big sigh of relief, because the expectations were huge, and they've really let down here the last few weeks. And, I don't think he thought Braylon Allen was going to play. I really don't. Oh. I think, they were thinking, look, I'm not going to play you if you're going to run like you did last week. Cautious, tentative. If it's bothering you, don't play. But Yakimelli didn't play either, and he's got an oblique injury. So they were down to Aker. We thought that Yakimelli was going to still play. And I think Braylon Allen probably said, look, I'm ready to play. Let me play. And when he ran hard and ran with toughness, they just kept playing him. And I think he showed his coach something, and he showed us something with his toughness in playing that way. And obviously, Mordecai playing with pain and dealing with what he's dealing with. That was a gritty, gutty win, and a much needed win for Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably weren't paying attention to exactly the intricacies of what went on in the game, but everything you just mentioned, because it has been disappointing from a record standpoint for Luke Fickell this year. And I think a lot of the Wisconsin fan base has probably been underwhelmed with what they've seen in some ways. But they've been playing for a chunk of the season without the starting quarterback, who is highly experienced and highly talented, that they expected to have, who's also a leader. He's soft-spoken, but his energy does permeate through the team. So they were missing him. Then, of course, Ches Malusi goes out a month into the season. They had this unbelievable 1-2 punch where both these running backs were rushing for over 100 yards, it felt like, every week. And they were dynamic because they did different things. So Malusi is gone. And Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator, has told us he was their most explosive player. So he's out. Then Braylon Allen goes down. So now you don't even have any of those three. And those might have been the three most important players to their offense. Their defense was still playing well. They just couldn't generate enough points. So I understand where the frustrations are. I just feel like there were reasons for that frustration that aren't being talked about enough, that aren't being at least saying, all right, we get it. Maybe they should still keep winning. They should have beaten Indiana. They should have beaten Northwestern. I get all that. They're playing without three of their most important offensive players. And even that Northwestern game, Tanner Mordecai comes back. It's his first game back with a screw in his hand, trying to learn how to grip the ball the right way, throw the ball the right way. He fumbled it when he was carrying it. To me, this showed that they still have that grit. They still have that intensity that their coaching staff and their players were looking for. I was really impressed by Wisconsin. And as I said, I was really impressed by both teams, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and consider this also. In that game Saturday, Wisconsin played without their best deep threat wide receiver, too. Bryson Green was injured, did not play in the game, transfer from Oklahoma State. And then defensively, Luke said to us and told us all week, we got to get off to a better start. We got to play well early. We got to have some good things happen early. Well, they didn't play well early. Nebraska scored on their first possession. And they were having trouble stopping Nebraska and slowing them down. And Chubba Purdy got off to a fast start. So they didn't start fast, but they settled down defensively and ended up playing an outstanding game. And they played it, for the most part, most of that game without their best defensive player. I mean, Waller got hurt on making a tackle, coming into the game, 95 tackles on the season. Their leading tackler, their vocal leader, the guy that called the whole team out, the whole defense out during the week. Now he's out of the game, so they had to play without him. And I thought defensively, particularly in the second half and overtime, they played outstanding.
It will be interesting to see what Chubba Purdy looks like against that Iowa defense. One final shout out from the Big Ten. We mentioned at the end of the show last week, why is David Braun not the full-time head coach at Northwestern yet? What are they waiting for? Well, it happened Thursday. They officially name him, and he rewards them with bowl eligibility. And I mean, it's got to be one of the best stories in all of college football this year. They beat Purdue 23-15, 6 wins for Northwestern. That's remarkable.
It really is. I mean, I was impressed with him when I sat down with him in Indianapolis at the Big Ten Media Day. And, he knew he was stepping into a very, very difficult situation. And, but he just really wanted to just take care of the guys, take care of the guys on the team and in that locker room and really serve them. And, just remarkable to see what they've been able to do.
All right, let's look ahead. Big Ten matchups for this final regular season week 13. We mentioned Iowa travels to Nebraska. That's the other part. It is in Lincoln. And I do think that's going to play a role. Matt Rule when we met with him last week, was very impressed with what the fan base and the crowd and the support looks like in Nebraska. And we've done games there. It is legitimate. No matter if they're good or bad, they show up, they sell out. Memorial is legit. So that'll be interesting. And then, we have our game, Penn State and Michigan State. So let's just quickly, any other final thoughts on Iowa and Nebraska? Like Iowa, yes, they can get to 10 wins. That does make a big difference. And New Year's Six Bowl potentially is still in the balance for them, certainly with the Big Ten championship, if they can put together a nice showing there. But we kind of know what their fate is. They're the winners of the Big Ten West. Nebraska is going to be playing incredibly hungry. And this is the other thing that Matt Rule said to us. It's almost a mirror image of his previous 2 collegiate stops, where they were 5-3 or 5-4, and then they lose a couple games. They're 5-6. They have to win that last game to get to bowl eligibility, and then they explode the next season because they've learned to win. It would be crazy if it happens again, but it just feels like Matt Rule has that infrastructure, and he's never freaking out. He's always calm. He's always feeling okay about where his team is. He said this is special that they get to play in these games that matter so much. And the other point he made, and he's right, and it's going to be the same case this week because Iowa doesn't blow anyone out, but they've been in every game this year except for the Michigan game. They have been in at some point in the game. Even Colorado, week 2, it looks like it's a way worse score than they were close for most of that game. That defense was in it the entire way. So I think that this is going to be a fun game to watch, a fun game to follow.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Nebraska has a great shot if they take care of the football. All
Yeah.
right. If they take care of the football, you cannot turn the ball over like they've done for most of the season against a team like Iowa, because they will not beat themselves. And then I think, if they take care of the ball, then it simply comes down to who plays the best between Chuba Purdy and Deacon Hill, because both teams have really good run defenses, and it's not going to be easy running the football against either one of these two teams. And so whichever quarterback is most effective and most efficient and makes some big plays in the passing game, that's who's going to win the game.
No question. That one is on Black Friday, as is our game. Number 12, Penn State, Michigan State, Ford Field. We've got you Saturday. I almost said Saturday night. It's Big Ten Friday night this week, with College Countdown starting 30 minutes before kickoff. This is similar in some ways. So let's just kind of go through what we expect some of the storylines to be. Penn State loses the 2 games to Michigan and Ohio State. Those were the 2 games they needed. They've beaten everybody else, some of them dominant, some of them not as dominant, but they've gotten to where they expected to be otherwise. They're 9-2. They have another chance to go 10 or 11-2 this year based on how everything plays out. Drew Allar, we mentioned, goes down last week in their game to Rutgers. Bo Prabula looked good when he came in. So that's really what they're fighting. They're fighting for 10 wins in the regular season, potentially 11 wins again to go 11-2 for the second consecutive year, or New Year's Six Bowl. That's what they're fighting for. And they're fighting to now develop potentially into next year, whether it's Drew Allar, whether it's Bo Prabula. One of those guys is going to have to look to continue to get better in the final week of the season. On the other side, you have Michigan State, who just won their second game in the last 3 weeks. They beat Indiana on a fantastic final drive by Caden Hauser, and he finds Malik Carr, who just put a bunch of guys basically on his back on the way to the end zone. Also, Montori Foster had one of the best touchdown catches we've seen all season. One-handed, spin away from a defender, shed another tackler into the end zone. But Hauser played well, career high in yardage last week, and 245 to be exact. And Harlan Barnett is still auditioning for the job. I mean, plain and simple, he told us 2 weeks ago he wants the job. He wants to be the full-time head coach of Michigan State. He feels like if he had recruiting and a full offseason, things would look a little different. So 2 different kind of perspectives. We kind of know where one is. There's a lot of question marks on the other one. It's still a rivalry. It's the land grant trophy. So one of the weirder trophies, which we'll get to in a second. But I'm excited for the game. I think that it has a chance to be pretty fun, and there's some question marks that we're going to get to answer.
Yeah, I think, a couple things. First of all, what is the status with Drew Allar? And is he 100%? Is he a little bit nicked up? Is it affecting him throwing the football this week? We'll find out soon enough. I would not be surprised, even if he's 100% healthy, I would not be surprised if we see a sprinkling of Bo Prabula in the offense, because he gives them a different dynamic. I mean, he is a dynamic runner, and it makes the defense account for some things that you don't necessarily prepare for with Drew Allar. So I would not be surprised to see a little bit more sprinkling of him in this game. Then it's just a matter of, what Penn State team, what's their mindset overall going to be when they show up? And I think it'll be good. I think they realize, look, we didn't get it done against Ohio State and Michigan. We still have a chance to finish as a top team, maybe a top 10, in the final rankings, get to a great bowl game, and just build, forward for next year. So I really think that we'll see that from them. Michigan State, you mentioned Harlan Barnett is playing for the job and playing, is interviewing on the spot. So are all the players. The players are putting stuff on tape, and this is their last game, right? This is their last opportunity to go out and play, the last opportunity to wear that jersey, to wear that helmet, to have that brotherhood and that camaraderie. And we've been impressed, even though they haven't won the games that we've done. We've been impressed at their closeness, and their attitude, and how hard they play and how hard they practice. And so this is their last time to go through it. And, these guys, these players that have played in this season and have gone through all the adversity, from the coaching change to the losing, all that kind of stuff, they will be better human beings and better men down the road because of going through a season like this. But they do get one more opportunity to try to get a W.
Really well put. Really well put. Excited to see how they handle themselves on Friday. So those 2 games on Friday, then 5 Big Ten games on Saturday. Let's only really hit on the one that I think everybody's going to be watching. That's Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, the entire season has been building up to this. So now, based on where the teams are right now, how do you see this game playing out?
I think it's going to be another great football game. You know, Michigan has won the last 2 years, and they won actually, you know, kind of convincingly.
Yeah.
If they win this year, I don't think it's going to be that kind of game, because I do think Ohio State, I think they're better on defense this year than they were the last 2 years. In you know, Jim Knowles' second year, I think this is the best defense that they've had. And I think they're hitting their stride offensively. And I think Michigan has gotten by without Jim Harbaugh on the sideline these last 2 weeks at Penn State and at Maryland. Being at home will help, but I do think they will miss him on the sidelines in this game. And I will not be surprised if Ohio State doesn't go in there and get the job done.
One thing that we know we won't hear as much is that Jim Harbaugh's in the hotel watching. Now, we might hear that he's at home watching.
Yeah.
He won't be in the hotel watching.
Yeah.
I'm most curious. First of all, Roman Wilson's got to be healthy.
Yeah.
For that. If Roman Wilson's not healthy, Michigan's offense looks entirely different than what it looks like with him. And
the other thing, Noah, that you know, and I haven't read any of the reports coming out of Ann Arbor yet, but Ladarius Henderson, their starting left tackle, did not play. All right, so they started. What's his name? The kid who transferred from Stanford, his name's escaped me right now.
Yeah, I've got it behind. Yes.
Anyway, he started at left tackle. He gets hurt. All right. So now to finish the game, they take Carson Barnhart, who's the right tackle, move him to left tackle, and Trente Jones, who's like the extra offensive lineman, plays right tackle. And so, you know, that's not their best version. This is the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line the last 2 years. So I'm curious to see if Henderson was just held out for precaution, if he's going to be good to go, or what their offensive line looks like going into that game, because that, you know, their offensive line and defensive line has been the reason they've beaten Ohio State the last 2 years. And it'll be interesting to see if they're at full strength or not.
The other main point for this game, the biggest games is when the stars tend to shine brightest. And I think everybody's been waiting. You know, a lot of people are saying, well, what is Marvin Harrison? Where is he in the Heisman ranking? You know, where is he in the best players in college football? A lot of people do believe that he is the best player in college football in terms of skill set, in terms of impact to the team. If he, you know, if he's that guy in many ways, and we believe he is, he'll have a major impact in this game. And if he does have a major impact in this game, and I'm talking eye-popping numbers, I'm talking crazy stats that Michigan hasn't allowed to anybody this year, does that change the way he's talked about for New York at the end of the year?
Well, I think so. I mean, because I'm sure there's voters like me who, you know, they think, okay, how do these guys play in the biggest games, right? That's what matters the most. And there's no stage bigger than the Ohio State Michigan game. You know who else has that opportunity to show up and play big is Blake Corum. Yeah. Remember, he didn't play in this game last year. And when they played 2 years ago, when they won, he was kind of the second guy that came in. Hassan Haskins was the main guy, and Blake Corum was kind of the change-up guy. Now he's the main guy. He's the bell cow. Did not play last year after getting hurt against Illinois. Played one play, carried the ball one time, you know, but he couldn't play. And so, you know, he's itching to play and to play well in his last game at the Big House against Ohio State in this game.
Going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait for the game. That one, of course, is Saturday, and we will have all eyes on that one. Other games we won't really expand on, but Indiana and Purdue, both teams are 3-8. Disappointing season for Purdue, but they finish up at home. Northwestern and Illinois. Illinois has a chance to get to bowl eligibility with a win. Wisconsin at Minnesota. Minnesota has a chance to get to bowl eligibility. Maryland at Rutgers. Both teams already with 6 wins. Who will find their 7th as we get to our Xfinity big connections on and off the field. And we mentioned the Land Grant Trophy. I did this game last year. I saw the trophy. I was like, what is that thing? I'm not entirely sure what it's supposed to be built at, but the late Spartans head coach George Pearls and Joe Paterno had chatted with each other about playing in the final game of the season, trying to make it more than just a game. Really, as both were a little tired of the Ohio State and Michigan stuff and that game overshadowing, which, look, in many ways it still does. But we get this on Black Friday, and this is the only game that's really going on. And so I think it's a lot of fun that it gets to be played and gets to kind of stand on its own. First game as conference opponents was 1993. They played 10 times before that, starting in 1914. Series is now 18-18-1, so an even matchup. But I want to talk about the trophy itself, the Land Grant Trophy, and let's see if we can get a photo right there. All right, so here's what we got. It is 3 shelves, more than 50 pounds, several feet tall. I see a Nittany lion. I see buildings. I see like a black and white photo, and I see some football player on top of it. It's bizarre. But honestly, seeing the players try to hoist it is maybe my favorite part after the victory.
Yeah, that's I don't even know what more to say about that. I mean, there is a lot going on that trophy. I mean, for me personally, I prefer like the Wisconsin-Minnesota deal, the axe, I mean, it's painted on 2 different sides. It's just one thing, easy to carry, easy to hoist over your head. That there is a handful.
Yeah, big time. I would love to see them try to pass it around or do different things with it, but that's a workout. You can do squats with that. You could do back squats with that. You could do deadlifts with that thing. So we'll see who takes the Land Grant Trophy, but we will be there at Ford Field in Detroit to watch it all unfold. Again,
I'm glad we're going to be at Ford Field too, because I did this game a couple years ago, 2019, in a blizzard in East Lansing.
Yeah.
So, in fact, there was so much snow on the field, and Penn State was in their all white uniforms. I mean, you couldn't really see. You couldn't see yard lines. You could barely see wide receivers at times. So it was a crazy environment.
Yeah, nobody else really thinks of that. Of like, wow, the uniforms aren't really going to be good with the snow, or why are those numbers so small and bunched up on the jersey? That's the stuff that keeps us up at night and keeps Ty Guy up at night and anybody else. So we'll see how it all goes. All right, let's go to our Xfinity fan questions from Madison. I believe we've got 3 locked and loaded, so let's hear our first.
I'm John. I am from Onalaska, Wisconsin. And Todd, do you think Wisconsin will win the Axe game?
Yes, I do think Wisconsin will win the Axe game. I think that win last week was very encouraging for them, very confidence building for them. Braylon Allen being back in the mix, if he can go again, Tanner Mordecai with another game under his belt. And Minnesota, they've got issues on offense. They don't have a complementary offense. I think they play good defense. They can run the football. They don't throw it real well. So I like Wisconsin going in and winning that game.
Would be the 22nd consecutive winning season for the Badgers. They just clinched their 22nd consecutive bowl season with the win last week. All right, let's go to question number 2.
Hi, my name is Jake Garcia, and I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. And my question for Noah is, who do you think will make the college football playoff?
Jake Garcia. We got a full name. I love it. Omaha is in the house. That's a really difficult question to answer because I think there are so many scenarios right now. You've got to believe that the winner of this Michigan-Ohio State game is likely going to win the Big Ten championship. They'll be in. You've got to imagine if Georgia runs the table and beats Alabama, they're a lock. In fact, I think Georgia, in all likelihood, is probably a lock regardless, even if they did lose to Alabama in that SEC championship game, just given what they've done the last 2 years, given the fact that they ran through the SEC undefeated in the regular season, they likely will get in. So at that point, now you probably have 2 SEC teams in with Alabama. If Georgia beats them, Alabama's out. Then you've got to believe that the winner of the Pac-12 championship is going to be in there. And there's an argument you could make for Washington, even if they did lose the Pac-12 championship, to get in there. What happens with Florida State? If they can't continue without Jordan Travis now, if they lose in the ACC championship game to Louisville, they're not going to get in there. So I think there's a lot of situations. Texas still has the outside chance if they run the table. there are a lot of teams that are hoping. I think it's probably those top 8. So you probably cut it off at where Alabama is. So you've got Alabama, Texas, Oregon, Washington, and the current top 4, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, and Florida State. So a lot of situations depending on the as always, the conference championship games. But it does feel like those 8 teams all have legitimate reason to believe that they can win the national championship this year, which is fun.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very exciting here down the stretch because I would agree with you. I think for sure the winner of the Ohio State-Michigan game is in. For sure the winner of the SEC championship game is in. If Oregon and Washington make it there unscathed, the winner of that game is in. So that's 3. Now you've got 1 spot left and a lot of other scenarios to who would get that 4th spot. And so, arguments could be made for a lot of different people, very convincing arguments. And so the committee will have their work cut out for them if it plays out that way.
Florida State feels like the biggest swing to me. And they not only have to win, but it feels like in some ways, certainly this week, if they can win convincingly, and that's not an easy task against Florida, that could go a long way for them. All right, we've got one final question. Let's get to that before we get out of here.
Hi, my name is Michaela, and I'm from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. And my question for you is what's different about Madison this time around?
Michaela. So Madison was fairly similar this time around. The biggest difference was that Wisconsin won the football game. That certainly helped, and the crowd was really into it. Senior night, that was the emotions flowing from there. We did go back to Mickey's, though, and this time we went to Mickey's with the entirety of the crew. And Todd, you got to show off your acting chops a little bit. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun doing that. Did a little segment on Mickey's and comparing it to the Big Ten West, and so it was a lot of fun. Yeah, and the food was delivered again as usual. So had the scrambler one day, had the liver and onions another day. So it was all good. I would say the other thing that was different, I think it was warmer this time than we were there the first time. We were there at the end, middle of November, and it was balmy and seasonal there in Madison. So I'll take that.
Yeah, I felt like an idiot because I brought my big coat and I'm wearing it around. Yeah, I was wearing it around and I'm like, what? This is fun. This is normal. This is like fall weather. What's going on here? We did get Gotham Bagels. Shout out to Joe Thomas, the Hall of Famer, and his business partner, Joey, for providing our entire crew with a breakfast on Saturday morning. That was awesome. Ty Guy and I went to go pick them up, and it was a joyous time over there. They were awesome in there. We met another guy named Joe. So we know for a fact there are 3 people associated with the bagel place: Joe, and Joey. Sounds like a ripoff of Ed, and Eddie. So that was good. But yeah, it was. I'm with you. It was deceptively warm. Mm-hmm. And we had a good time. We stayed at a different hotel as well. So I guess that was different. But otherwise, Madison's great. I'll go there all the time. I love that
fun place.
And I've heard, I still have so many other places that I want to hit just because I've gotten more recommendation. I still want to go to Dottie. So that'll happen if I do get to Madison at some point during the hoop season. All right. Any other games you want to hit on before we get out of here? Obviously, rivalry week, we hit on a bunch of them, but anything else you want to shout out?
No, I don't think. I mean, again, I cannot wait to do our game. I'm kind of excited. We're doing it on Friday because I really want to sit there and, watch the Ohio State-Michigan game and just kind of lock in all day Saturday and pick and choose the games that I want to watch. Because I love that game. I love the Iron Bowl. I've had a chance to do several Iron Bowls. And that's good drama, good TV. So look forward to the whole day of college football.
Oh, it's going to be several hours of uninterrupted.
Yes.
College football.
Yeah. The only interruption will be when I get up to go get something to eat. That'll be it when I go to the refrigerator. So,
nice. All right. Yeah. Maybe your leftover liver and onions. All right. That'll do it for us. Episode number 13. Thanks for tuning in. Big Talk with Todd and Noah, presented by Xfinity 10G Network. Make sure to download and subscribe on the NBC Sports YouTube page, wherever you get your audio podcasts. And for one final time next week, we will talk to you again.
Yep. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.